Welcome to episode 9 of the 15-Minute Coffee Podcast with Brandon Salazar, your go-to destination for expert perspectives and valuable insights from the world of business. Today I'm here with Laura Glotzbach, a recent Nebraska College of Business Hall of Fame inductee and owner of LGS Marketing Services. But before we get into the questions, I'd like to thank Mrs. Glotzbach for being a guest on the podcast.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Brandon.
I'd also like to congratulate Ms. Glotzbach on recently receiving her master's degree on professional studies in psychology of leadership from Penn State University.
Thank you. It was a lifelong goal of mine to have a master's degree, and I might have been probably the oldest person in the program, but it didn't matter. We all can do it, no matter
Yep,
when we start, we can always get to that finish line.
yep, that's a good point. All right, so then let's start with tell me about your early life and career that led you to where you are today.
You know, Brandon, that is such an insightful question. So much of what molds us into what we like to do, like our hobbies, our desires and where we want to go in career, can really start from the things that we are experiencing when we are in our childhood. And my path is very similar to that. I grew up with parents that were role models for me. They were educators and they dedicated their careers to help students thrive in elementary and middle school. I watched them be partners, support each other. And I got to really see firsthand what a high functioning collaborative team looks like. I also will say I really did enjoy watching TV as a kid. And there was this one particular TV show. It was called Who's the Boss? It's definitely not there anymore, but you can probably find it on streaming services. But what resonated with me the most about that show was it showcased a woman that was a business owner, and she happened to be a creative agency business owner in advertising. I had aspirations of always wanting to work in New York City, to work in an advertising agency, and also be in this high functioning collaborative environment. All of those things that I got to see as a kid, I started to really live after I graduated Rider with a degree in advertising. And 2 years later, I was actually living that dream. So yeah, it really does start with your early life if you reflect back on it and where you end up.
Yeah, I want to highlight the fact that you take inspiration from a show. And while I don't necessarily take inspiration from a certain person or like certain show in this aspect, I feel as someone who is not a genius in school, but definitely tries hard. I take inspiration from the people who are successful, but not always that successful in school. Because it took me a
Yeah.
long time to realize that you don't have to be a genius in school to be successful in the real world. And that's kind of like what highlights with that I take inspiration from that. So that's great
Oh,
to
I'm
hear.
so glad to hear that. Oh, Brandon, there are so many ways to define success, and it's not just a 4.0 GPA.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're discovering that yourself too. It's great.
Yep. And so let's change to Rider University Women's Leadership Council. And so, what does mentoring the young women in Rider University's Women Leadership Council mean to you, and what is the best part of contributing to that organization?
To me, being a mentor is incredibly important. It opens up an opportunity where you get to share stories. And when you are a mentor, I think that's a gift, being able to share stories with other people. I know I've had the opportunity to work with some incredible women, students and mentors like myself, and we all learn from each other. How it kind of works is there's like a leadership topic. We talk about it, we give each other practical advice, we work through exercises, and we share stories. We definitely help each other through challenges and we celebrate each other's victories. It's really the essence of a true community, Brandon. And that is really one of the best parts of being a member of the council is that give and take. So even though you might be a mentor and I'm assigned a certain student, we're mentoring each other back and forth. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, incredible. I've heard only incredible things about it. I've seen very prominent alumni go through there, and I'm seeing very prominent undergraduates go through there right now. So it's definitely something that's has a profound impact on them, at least on campus so far.
That's our goal.
Yeah. And so let's go to, can you talk about a pivotal moment in your or decision in your career that has significantly impacted your career trajectory?
I sure can. These types of pivotal moments, they can tend to be something that could have been a disaster. And the story I'm about to share with you, Brandon, is very much like that. I was in a point in time in my career where I was headed for burnout. It was not great. Now I was working for years. I had lots of experience. I had reached my goal. I was a senior leader. I wasn't quite Angela Bauer yet, running the show, but I was definitely working in an organization that I loved being a part of. But I was also, from a personal side, living really far from New York City, and it was 2 hour commute each way. And it was not a job that you leave from 9 to 5. Like I was just at that point of complete exhaustion. And I will say, when you're in this space, when you feel like, oh my God, I have no choices. This happens to me. Like you're at the point of burnout. You can't see straight. You can't think, and you forget that you have choices, and you start to feel stuck. Um, what I chose to do in that moment was to take a pause. And I was lucky I had a week vacation. I took a break because I realized there was no way I could possibly think my way out of this situation if I just didn't rest. Sleep is so important. And during that week, that moment, a recruiter reached out to me, Brandon. It was out of the blue, and had this opportunity to shift away from being an employee, but to be a consultant. And that was really what started the LGS Marketing Services company. Was that moment, doing something so radically different than what I've ever thought I would do, which was be an employee in another company and be a big part of that company. But I don't think I would have been open to the opportunity if I hadn't taken that break and realized I needed to just rest. It allowed myself to be a lot more open minded to things that probably would have felt very scary if it was in that other crisis moment I was in.
Yeah, and I like how you highlighted you can't think your way out of it because as someone who is critically thinking about everything, it's not that like again, I mentioned that I'm not the most genius person, but I will take my time and work hard for it. So that's something I do a lot. I think thoroughly about a lot of things that I do. And like I like to prepare, uh, be organized in a way. So definitely realizing
Do
you
it.
can't think your way through everything is definitely a hard task because I still haven't figured out that I can't think my way through everything.
Well,
But
I will say I think you can, but you need rest.
yeah,
There's no way I could have thought clearly or had any opportunity of getting an answer at the level of exhaustion I was experiencing. But I'll share with you a tip. Would you mind hearing one? there's there's a moment where when you're pushing yourself to like think, you're like, if I just stay up a little bit later, you're hitting that brick wall. The ideas aren't coming, but you're like, oh, I just have to like maybe get another cup of coffee, and just keep pushing yourself to do that. The idea is not going to come when you're like that. When you put yourself out of it, shift into something else, go for a walk, go to sleep, work on something else, your mind is actually still actively working on it. It's just behind the scenes. So you can have this like aha moment maybe like 8 hours later. That's why a lot of people say their best ideas come in the shower, because like they wake up and they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Next thing you know, whoa, that's the solution. It's because
yeah.
your mind's been doing all the work. You just don't have to sweat through it. So give that a shot. Next time you feel like you're squeezing so much out of your brain to think, take a pause and see what happens in the next 8 to 12 hours. I have a feeling you're going to come up with a solution you didn't really know you had, because your brain was working on it all along.
I definitely agree with the showers because it's a lot of overstimulation. There's a lot of overstimulation, especially as a college student and
Oh, for
someone who's
sure.
working. There's definitely like so many things you could just be thinking of at one time that the one thing that you're trying to solve, no matter how hard it may be, it's not going to happen because you're overwhelmed. So
Yeah,
that
give
definitely
it
is
a
a good
give it
point.
a break. Put
Yeah,
it put it to side and trust that your brain's going to work on it for you. It
yeah,
saved me many, many, many hours of frustration. And I actually, as a leader, I encourage my team to do the same. Like, you know what? Let's look at this with fresh eyes in the morning, and we always come up with a better idea when we do that.
yeah. All right. So then, what aspects of marketing captivate your interests, and what makes it stand out to you as a special field?
All of it. I'm not sure that won't surprise you. I am someone that is wildly brand loyal and also incredibly susceptible to marketing. So if I see a really creative ad, a great sales offer, and it's a brand that I love and support, I'm all in. What I will say, I really like the creative side of marketing, and I also like the market research side. I'm sure I like data. I'm a big fan of data and finding insights. And I believe right now that when companies create marketing campaigns that are that are based off of that one grain of insight, this insight that is they can create everything around it. That's where award-winning marketing campaigns come from. That's where campaigns that can break through the mundane, all the clutter, that overstimulation you're talking about, is when it's based off of that marketing and that market research. And that's truly what really excites me.
Nice. So then let's start with, could you describe the process of starting your own business? And then how did you acquire your first few clients?
Sure. So my process came right out of that 1 week vacation where I decided, I was going to walk through that door of opportunity that opens up for me and to become that consultant. And it's very similar to other relationships that you may have with friendships. Maybe the relationship you're starting to build with your professors at Ryder. It takes time to build trust. And when I started by myself, I was in a room, I was being able to do the things that I really love doing, which is sharing insights and partnering with business, in this case, marketing managers that were in charge of a huge brand. And soon enough, our trust began to build and our relationships grew. And I was able to show after a long amount of time that the quality of work we were delivering was something they could come to rely on. And that's how one client can lead to another. It really is based off of that. I, I was going to say word of mouth, but really, you come to trust that you can lean on us and LGS Marketing Services is going to deliver. And that's something I'm very proud of.
Yeah, so you highlighted reliability and trustworthiness. So at what point did you realize that you're going to get somewhere with that? Because of course it's also about what you provide, but I would say there's thousands, if not millions, of people who provide what you provide. So what makes you guys stand out with your trustworthiness and reliability that you would think that has allowed you to get customers?
That's the intangible. That's the piece that, whether you work in the business I'm in, which is marketing analytics, or in the advertising space, it's account management, could be sales. If you're a salesperson, you've got to find a way to make that human connection and building those relationships. And you know the people that I'm lucky enough to work with and support, the decisions that they need to make are really complicated and can make or break a brand. It's, millions of dollars are on the line. So they really want a group of people around the table that are highly committed, dedicated, and are subject matter experts. So there's a lot of people that do what I do, you're right. But do they do it the same way? That's the piece where that human element comes in. And I think that's what makes us stand out.
Nice. So then, with our final question, what are some key skills and abilities that you believe are essential for success as a business owner?
Sure. Well, I want to answer this in two ways. The first is this like foundational skill set, I would say is like having business acumen, understanding how your business makes money, which may not be exactly how you thought it was. So really being aware of what you thought and what actually is happening might be two different things. Knowing where you can get growth, how can you scale your business, and most importantly, how you can bring in new talent and keep them. That's a critical piece of it. So I would say without knowing how to do those types of elements, it would be very hard to have a business be operational, let alone profitable. But I will say there's more to it than just that. And there's a couple of skills I wanted to share with you, Brandon, that are tied a little bit further outside of the business acumen space. And it's tied to empathy, being self aware, and a willingness to learn. My suggestion is these skills are not only critical for a business owner, but really for anyone that wants to be a leader in their chosen industry. I'll give you an example about empathy. If you are an empathetic leader and you put yourself in the shoes of a customer and you start to look at what your online ordering process is, or let's say you have a product that's used in the kitchen, is it easy to open that bottle if your hands are wet? Because cooks are always washing their hands. Like really being empathetic to what your customer is going through. You can create some pretty wild product innovations You can change the way your order form is. You can start doing market research to understand if your experience was more scalable and how to fix it. Not to mention what you can do if you're an empathetic leader for your employees. I mean, this one particular skill, I bet you and I could talk about a whole podcast just on empathy if we wanted to. It's that important, in my opinion. So those are some of the ideas I just want to share with you this time on what could be really helpful for someone that wants to be a business owner or just a business leader in their space.
Yeah, and starting out, would you say that standing out is one of the most important things, as there's many people that can do, like say someone who wants to be an intern, would you say that standing out is one of the best things to do?
Standing out?
Standing out in a way that means like in your competitive market, you're the one that catches the eye of the recruiter.
Well, I think that's pretty subjective of what might catch that recruiter's eye. Um, some some probably the easiest way to figure that out is to read the job description and make sure the stories you share on your interview and in your resume align to what they want you to be doing already on the job, and finding a way to make that connection. Like just thinking about the podcast you're doing here, when you start to interview for internships, how do you connect that to the type of innovative employee you're going to be for that brand, for that company? I mean, it's right here.
Yeah,
This is one of your many stories of how you're so innovative, Brandon.
thank you.
So I think that's a way you can stand out, is just making those connections.
Thank you.
You're
And to wrap
welcome.
up, thank you for sharing your valuable insights with us, expertise. That wraps up episode 9 of the 15-Minute Coffee Podcast with Brandon Salazar. We hope you've enjoyed gaining insights from our guests and exploring the world of business with us. Don't forget to check out our podcast on our social media at the 15-Minute Coffee Podcast on YouTube and Instagram for upcoming episodes. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.